Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the episode today, we have Jake Morgan. Hello, Jake.
Hello.
And a special guest, Cameron Caswell, also known as Dr. Cam. Hello, Dr. Cam.
Hello, nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I am an adolescent psychologist and family success coach. And what I do is I help parents and teenagers reopen the line of communication, stay connected, and reduce the conflict and drama. I'm also a mom of a teen, so I live this every single day, and I am a mentor of teens. I have been for about 2 decades now. And so I have a lot of experience in understanding teens and why they behave the way they do. And I really had the aha moment when I was teaching adolescent psychology, and I had a lot of parents in my class, and they started coming up to me and saying, Dr. Cam, what you're teaching in class is completely changing our relationship with our own teens because he got them now. And I had this epiphany. I was like, oh my gosh, teens are so misunderstood. And once we understand them, we realize that they are not nearly as difficult as we tend to make them out to be, and that parenting them can actually be quite joyful. And that's what I want. I know, see, you're laughing. That's because nobody believes that, but it's true. And so that's why I'm out here trying to share this information with as many parents as I can.
One of the things, thank you for the introduction. One of the things which is said in the messages before we recorded was you help with how to calm the teen drama. What does it mean to you?
To calm it, well, I mean, if you talk to pretty much every parent I know I've talked to, there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of arguing and frustration and slam doors and yelling and nagging. And I try to give parents other tools to help them engage with their teens, encourage their teens that doesn't require nagging and yelling and all of those things, which we resort to because we don't know what else to do, but they don't work very well. And so I like to give other tools that actually work really well. And a lot of it comes from a place of curiosity rather than a place of frustration.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with what you just said. Not about it working really well, but about it not working. I can tell by
your face.
We're enjoying parenting teens at the moment. It is amazing.
That was sarcastic.
Yeah, it is. So teen translator, that's
Yes.
something that I saw on your website, which I think that kind of sums it up, and that's pretty much what you're just talking about, right?
Yep, I translate teen behavior. I think one of the main things I can say is a lot of what parents perceive as defiance, disrespect, attitude, all the things that trigger us so much. And I know, triggered too, that trigger so much. I translate that because that's not what teens are trying to communicate, which is why they get so frustrated when we get frustrated with them, and why teens are constantly saying, you don't understand me. Nobody understands me. You know why? We don't understand them. We don't. And so I'm trying to explain to you, like, I help parents say, when teens act this way, we see it this way. That's not what they mean. And if we can see it from the perspective of how they're trying to voice themselves, how they're trying to communicate something, they're just not good at it yet, because that's what they're learning how to do right now. And we get upset with them because they don't know how to do it well yet. But how is that teaching them anything? They're right now, their brain is their brain's going through a second growth spurt. We go through one during infancy when we're learning language and we're learning how to talk and we're learning how to walk, and all of these things goes through another brain growth spurt when we're in adolescence. And that's when we're learning how to think more complex, how to manage our emotions and regulate our emotions, how to read social cues, how to just maneuver ourselves in the world. We're not good at it at this age. So we need to learn how to do it. And I liken it to when our kids are learning to walk and they stumble, we don't get upset with them for not being able to walk perfectly the first time. We go scoop them up and we pick them up and we encourage them. But when our teens stumble by not communicating very well or not being able to regulate their emotions, we get angry rather than encouraging them and scooping them up and teaching them and helping them to learn how to do it the right way.
I have two teens. One of them is quite confrontational, let's just say, at the moment. And so it's, if you say anything to her, she may be delightful, or she may just come at you like a steam train for no apparent reason. And it's kind of weird what you said about, you know, that translating and understanding what they mean, because as an adult, I was also a teen at one point. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I can relate and I can understand, but I don't seem to be able to. It's a disconnect, and I'm not sure why not.
Isn't that crazy? And that's the thing I share too, is that all of us were teens before. So how do we not understand our teens? But first of all, we forget a lot about it, because being a teen, let's just be frank, sucks. I've yet to meet anybody that ever wants to relive that time of their life. It's difficult, right? So we block a lot of it out. We also, a lot of our negative connotations about adolescence is because of our own experience, right? We remember a lot of that negative. There's a lot of emotion around adolescence that's not very positive. Plus, the media portrays adolescence as a really negative experience, right? So the way we perceive and go into adolescence already has this negative mindset. I talk to kids, parents of newborns, and they're already going, oh my God, I'm going to enjoy it now, because when they become a teen, it's going to suck and they're going to hate me and this, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you know what? Now it is, because we're expecting that. And everything we look for now is to basically support that belief that teens are difficult. I work with teens. I meet with teens. Teens come over and hang out and have dinner and we have conversations. I love them because they are so passionate and so compassionate and have so much just the way they view the world. And they desperately, desperately want to be listened to and heard and validated and appreciated. That's what they want. So
that's the key thing then.
Yeah.
Being listened to and validated.
So much. It's all they want. And I work with teens and I hear the same thing over and over and over again. My parents don't listen to me. My parents don't understand. I can do nothing right. Why even try? All my parents care about is my school. They don't care about what interests me. And I hear this over and over again. And I know the parents of a lot of these kids, and they're beautiful people that love their kids tremendously. The messages that we convey isn't necessarily what we think we're conveying. So I also translate adult parent behavior to teenagers.
Interesting. And is this the prime parenting method? Or is this something else?
So the prime parenting method is what I created. It's really the step-by-step of how to take any issue you're having with your teenager. And actually this can work with anything. And it's these steps on how to come up with a solution. And what is different about this method is that it focuses a lot on mindset and a lot of what I'm talking about. And it's about being extraordinarily clear on what the problem is. Because I hear a lot about, oh, they've got a bad attitude. Oh, they're not motivated. What does that mean? Like when you tell your child, I don't like your attitude. Okay, what does that mean? They basically hear, I don't like you. I don't like hearing anything you have to say, right? What does that mean? So getting very specific. What about the attitude? What is it? How are they expressing it that you don't like? When is it occurring? Who are they showing that attitude to, right? It's really getting to be so specific on the behavior, because once we can look at the specifics, then we can address it. We can't address attitude. Then it's about looking for why does that exist? And my whole philosophy is that behavior is not the problem. It is a symptom of the problem. So we often try to address the behavior. It keeps showing up over and over and over. Have you had the same arguments with your teen multiple times?
It's not usually me. It's yeah, it's her mother.
Yeah.
She pushes it all on her, really. And
Yeah.
yeah, they have a pretty toxic relationship sometimes at the moment.
Yeah, it happens so often, and it's hard because, and in the secret that I always share is that your teen wants a healthy relationship with you as much as you want one with your teen. I've yet to meet a teen that doesn't want a better relationship with their parent, but they don't believe their parents want one with them. They really don't. They don't believe their parents like who they are. And the message we give them a lot of times is, we don't like who you are, because we focus so much on the behaviors we don't like, but we don't separate the behavior from the person. So we send this message as, I don't like you. And so it's really looking at, why does that behavior exist? And the behavior really a lot of times exists because they don't necessarily feel connected or accepted or appreciated by their parents anymore. And they're struggling to find that, because that's all they want. All they want. So they're defense mechanisms. A lot of the behavior is defense mechanisms. And the problem is, we respond to it from this place of criticism and judgment and fixing, which is just feeding into the reason that behavior exists in the first place, rather than addressing the behavior.
Are there any universal tips or strategies that kind of generally work and have a profound and sort of, wow, I can't believe that worked? Because you mentioned that a lot of the parents you speak to have really positive things to say. So is there anything that I could use, for example, that would have a big impact, and my wife would say, wow, my relationship with my daughter has improved so much?
Yeah, I actually do. The first one is, and I think the most important skill for any parent, is to listen. And we are terrible as a human race. We are terrible listeners. We learn to read, we learn to write, we learn to talk, we never learn to listen, and we suck at it. So listening, and I like to use the 80-20 rule to really figure this out. 80% of the time, you're not talking. You're quiet, your mouth is closed, you're listening to your teen talk. And it's coming from a place of understanding what they're trying to tell you. Because like I said, every teen, my parents don't understand me because we don't take the time to listen. And so it's listening to understand, not to fix, not to correct, it's to listen. The 20% is your time to talk, but use that time to clarify and to reflect back what you've heard. Ask questions. Make sure you understand it correctly. Let them know that you heard them. And what they may be saying may be, I don't like when you do this. I don't think this is fair. You know what? That's how they feel, and their feelings aren't negotiable. We can't change how they feel. That's how they feel. And so a lot of times we don't like seeing negative behaviors, especially when they're focused on us. But it's really important for us to allow them to express their negative emotions and to work through them. Because when we try to shut them down, when we say, don't feel sad, or you don't have the right to be mad at me, it doesn't stop them from feeling those. It makes them feel bad about feeling those bad emotions. So we want to listen and empathize and let them feel their emotions and validate that that's how they feel. That's when they feel understood. And when they feel understood, a lot of these other behaviors that come out because they're trying to be heard no longer have a need. So that is my
frustration.
Yeah, it's so much of it is frustration. I mean, think about it. When we're teens, our whole focus is trying to become independent, autonomous human beings. But while you're trying to be autonomous, you're having somebody tell you what to do and control your life. That's frustrating, right?
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So they're fighting back, and we get angry because we're like, you're disrespectful. Well, they're frustrated with us, right? And so when we have this connection of listening, it's amazing how our influence, which is what we want all along, becomes a lot more powerful because they trust us. They'll trust us to talk to us. They trust that we're there, that we understand them, and we're coming from a place of wanting to help rather than a place of judgment and wanting to change. So that is my number one tip. The other one that is extraordinarily powerful is to focus on what they do right instead of what they do wrong. And this works for a few reasons, but one is our brain kind of has an algorithm. And when we tell our brain to look for certain things, so one of the examples is if you look around your room real quick and spot everything that's red, just go real quick, spot everything in your room that's red. All right, now come back, tell me what you saw that was yellow, right? So we look for what we're telling our brain to look for. So when we're looking for all the behaviors that we need to fix and correct, that's all we see. Right? So we're constantly looking. My teen has attitude. Well, now all we're doing is looking for all the examples of my teen having attitude, which means we see more of it, which means we bring that up a lot more, which sends the message to our teen, you have attitude. Guess what? They start developing more and more attitude because that's who they are. They've got attitude. So now I'm leaning into this. When we focus on what they do right, we start seeing more of what they do right. And here's a shocking thing. They do a lot of stuff right. They really do. They're working their butt off to get your approval. So trust me, they're trying really hard to do stuff right. We start seeing more of what they do right. They start recognizing that we see what they do right. And guess what? They start doing more of it because that feels really good. That they can do stuff right. And we start seeing more of that. It is, but it's changing how we view it. So rather than trying to change our teen, which we can't do, it's impossible to change another human being. We need to change how we respond to our teen. And when we change the way we respond to our teen, guess what? They're going to start changing how they respond to us.
Yeah, I can see how powerful that is. The issue that I have at the moment that is kind of tricky is, for example, they come back from school straight in their bedroom, and then they don't want to come out of their bedroom. And if you ask them to come out, and then it's time for dinner. So it's dinner time, dinner's on the table, and still they'll be in their bedroom, and then they'll take ages to come down. And there's, it's kind of, it just seems to happen again and again and again. It's repeating.
And this happens with every teenager.
And they don't,
And I'm going to change your perspective on this one too. Let's say you've had a really bad day at work and you come home. Are you feeling chatty and sociable and want to go, help around the house and do chores and have people ask you about, how everything went? Or do you need some time to just chill? Teens have even less of a capacity to come down from this because their prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that is saying, okay, here's how to regulate your emotions, here's how to think through this. That's not developed until their late 20s, right? Their amygdala and their lower brain, which is their emotions and their fight or flight, that's fully developed. So they're looking through the world through a lens of emotions. Plus, they've got all this pressure that we don't even have and not without the ability and experience to deal with it. When they get home from school, they're freaking exhausted, mentally exhausted. They don't have the capacity, their battery is drained. They go up to their room because that's where they can just shut the door and just be. They can get on their phone, which they enjoy. They can just play video games, which gives that shot of, endorphins to your brain and makes you feel good. They just need time. The other thing is, and I'm just going to play it real, we're not always fun to hang out with. I mean, seriously, we want to hang out with them, but a lot of times it's like we want to hang out with them doing what we like to do, which they might not like to do. We also ask them questions like, how's school? I don't want to talk about school. School sucks. Right. So, and it starts getting into lectures and starts getting into this thing, and it's not fun to hang out with us. So if we want our kids to spend time with us, which we do, and again, they want to spend time with us too, do it on their terms. Invite them down when they're ready and they've had time to chill and relax and they've done their own thing. Do things they like to do. I hear so many parents complaining about video games, you know what? Talk about video games. Have them teach you about video games. I'm impressed. My nephew has taught me how to play some video games. I'm terrible. But we'll laugh. He'll set up a whole avatar for me. And he's like, Aunt Cam, this has got you. Like, he gets so excited. I mean, he's older now. He doesn't do this now, but, and would do all this. And it would be getting into his world. And all of a sudden, when we talk, my daughter loves Broadway. Of course, I like Broadway too, so it's an easier conversation. But oh my gosh, she'll talk for hours and teach me stuff on it, right? Or Disney blog. She loves the Disney blog. She'll talk for hours about that stuff. All I do is listen and ask questions. And now mom's really fun to talk to. I want to hang out with mom because mom will talk about stuff that I like.
Yeah,
and then when the tough conversation, yeah. And then when the tough conversations comes up, so much easier to do.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom. I'm just like hijacking all of this time.
Well, the positive thing is I'm listening intently, but I've got like 4 or 5 things building up that I want to ask you about. So one of the things that I wanted to mention as just a passing observation, which is your kind of what you're known for, being a teen translator. I noticed that actually in some instances you're actually a parent translator, because you mentioned about the fact that how they're interpreting what perhaps we're saying to them is not what we're intending. And just an observation that I wanted to ask you if you had come up on before. But the main question I wanted to ask you about was perhaps if someone misinterpreted the information and they went from having maybe too many standards, too many rules, to none at all. What are your thoughts on that topic?
I see this a lot. And it's you hear the pendulum swing. I liken it to the way I play bowling. I bowl into one gutter and then I overcorrect and bowl into the other gutter. That's all I do, right? And it's like, how do we get down the middle of it? And so a lot of people will misinterpret listening to them and empathizing with them as not setting any boundaries or consequences or accepting their being nasty to them. And that I do not encourage at all. In fact, that creates a lot of nastiness in and of itself, because teens need to feel safe, and parents are what makes them feel safe, and boundaries are what makes them feel safe. The key is creating the boundaries before they've crossed the boundary and establishing what the consequence is before, so that now they are clear. And those boundaries, you understand, you've had a conversation about why they're there. They're there to keep them safe. They're there to teach them how to interact with the world in a way that's acceptable, right? Like we can express anger, but here's where you cross the line. Verbally and physically attacking people, it's crossing the line. It's not the way to do it. Here's the consequence when that happens. But I'm giving you enough room in here for you to express or to explore or to figure it out for yourself, and not so strict. So we go from one extreme where we just let them get away with everything. And then we're like, okay, I've had it. And then we tighten everything down. And now there's no room to move at all. And they push and push. And then we're like, I give up. I can't do that anymore. And we let go, right? Instead, let's go, here's our boundaries. Here's why they're there. Help them establish the boundaries. Like, here's what we're trying to accomplish. What are some good boundaries? Now, what are the consequences if we break? Natural consequences are by far the best. Most parents resort to taking the phone away. I'm going to tell you something. I've never once, and I don't say this being like, woo, I've never once taken the phone away from my daughter, because it doesn't tie to anything that we're trying to address. right? So if it's something that you're trying to address, now, if it is phone use, okay, that makes sense. But if it's anything else, let's try to make natural consequences are the best as long as they're safe, right? So again, the way I compare this to help parents understand is if you are driving down the road and you get pulled over by a cop and they say you were speeding, and you're like, I did not see a speed signal, a sign anywhere. I had no idea. And they're like, well, you should have known. Okay. And today I'm going to give you a $500 fine just because I was supposed to be going home today and I was done. I was off duty and you made me pull you over. So I'm annoyed. So I'm going to give you 500, or I'm going to just keep charging you until I feel like you got your lesson. Like, this is how our rules and our consequences and the way we interact with our teens feels. It's so random and so all over, and how we're not giving them the opportunity to actually learn how to make good decisions on their own. And we're making them feel like they have zero control or chance. They don't have a chance, right? Because they don't know tomorrow, this might be, all of a sudden you might not like what I do. I don't know. So it's being very clear on, here's your boundaries, here's the consequences, whether mom or dad are there, it's the same consequence, right? We're all agreeing on them. Here you go. Now you have the decision to either stay within the boundaries or cross them. And if you make the decision to cross them, you know what the consequence is. I don't need to yell and scream. I just need to let you know you went over the boundary, which was clearly defined. And we already know what the consequence is. They're not going to like it, but they know what it is and it's fair. Make sense? Does that help?
Helps a lot.
Okay.
I was going to say if we have to look to like the government and speed limits for a better example, then we're definitely doing something wrong there, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You mentioned the toddlers or lower children having their first brain development and teens going through their second development. My interpretation is that parents help out a lot during the first one. So we've got like encouragement and reading together and lots of this stuff. But the second brain development, I think probably there's nothing, to my knowledge, that parents do to assist in that particular example. So what do you encourage or advocate?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And that's one of the things that I am why I'm so passionate about this age range, is because not only do a lot of us, well, we don't know it's happening, first of all, right? I mean, this is fairly new science, like in the past decade or so, thanks to neuroscience, right? So we didn't even know this. So what's happening, and just to explain a little bit, is during adolescence, our brain is growing in density, not in size. And so it's creating all of those connections, right? And it's kind of like the more you use the connections, the stronger they get. And so we're hardwiring a lot of our belief systems and a lot of our skills. This is why actually addictions and habits and behaviors that are created during adolescence are harder to overcome when we're older, because we're really creating those. And then when we don't use them during this age, it goes through this pruning. And so we kind of lose a lot of these. Now, our entire adulthood, we still continue to create connections, but not at the rate and the capacity that we do during the teen years. So this gives us a window of opportunity to really help our kids establish belief systems that are positive habits. The connection with us has probably the biggest impact of anything on our teens' development and their self-confidence. And I think a lot of parents, we end up kind of giving that away to other people. Like we sign them up for so many activities and they're off doing all of this stuff. We're establishing the habit of being extraordinarily busy. And we've seen this whole society getting into busyness, right? We're so busy, we can't sit down and we're super stressed. And so establishing this like sense of self-care, sense of just affirming who you are and self-worth, all of those things is what establishes during adolescence. And my belief is, because we don't necessarily foster this when they're teens, because we're correcting them so much and we're establishing almost these beliefs of a completely opposite of not being enough, of not doing enough, we end up spending the rest of our adult lives trying to compensate for that. And so I believe we have an opportunity during the adolescence to really establish healthy mental health, to really build that, rather than kind of hurt it, which a lot of times we're doing without being aware of.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, we recently had an incident in the school about a couple of weeks ago, and we discovered that perhaps because one of my youngest daughter, she's over the last year or so, and definitely COVID hasn't helped with the lockdown and things like that, not at all. But she's become more and more sort of introverted, and she used to be really confident and bubbly, and she's become sort of a shadow of her former self sometimes, and it's been very difficult to break through to her and understand what is the root cause of this. And then there was an incident in the school, and since then I've come to realize that she didn't feel supported with her friend group at school, and I think there's quite a maybe a manipulative girl in her group, and as a result, because my daughter is not feeling very confident, it's kind of undermined what confidence she did have. And so we didn't have a clue that any of this was going on. She didn't want anyone to come to her birthday party, and you'd say, why? And she goes, I don't want to have a birthday party. And things retrospectively are all sort of fitting into place, and you can see, well, she's really been unhappy for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it's been a kind of, it's been a big impact on us to realize that she was kind of suffering all this way, but of course she wouldn't open up and tell us.
No.
So it was extremely difficult to know why. Since then, we've been as supportive as we can, and we've spoken to the school, and we've had her moved into a different friend group, into a different form where she's got some friends who I think are perhaps going to be a more positive influence on her. But so these are some of the things that we've been going through, and because we had no clue, because we were doing, as you say, how was school today? What if you, and not just how was school, because you get the answer, yeah, it's good. But I mean, what was the best thing that happened to you? What was the highlight of your day? Is there anything funny that happened? All of these kind of things to try and, but you're right, maybe we were asking at the wrong time on our terms, and rather than this.
Well, part of it too, and just to let you know, Jake, what you're describing, I've heard that story a lot. In fact, with my own daughter, right? So it is the friend group, the kind of withdrawing, the things like that happen. And the one reason is a lot of teens don't share this information with their parents because they don't want their parents to worry or be disappointed. That's the number one reason they don't share it. I've heard that over and over and over again. I've even heard, so they just don't want to worry their parents.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So it's not a place if I don't trust you, it's a place if you're already stressed. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to be disappointed. I'm going to just deal with this on my own. So one of the things I suggest with that is sharing with them your own sense of insecurities or feeling less than a lot of times I think we try to show our kids we got it all together and we've got it all figured out and we're strong because we want them to feel safe. But what that does is make them feel inadequate because they can't live up to that. So showing them that it's okay and giving them room to not be perfect. And I'm not saying you don't do that, but I think a lot of times we don't realize we're sharing that message, because we're always encouraging their successes without being able to really lean into what didn't go well and being okay with that and celebrating that. And what did you learn from that? The other thing is that the peer issues, this is the age where they happen a lot, and there's a lot of reasons why they happen. The good news is the parent connection is actually even more powerful even now than the peer connection. And again, it's doing things on her terms. So when you're asking questions and she's just like, I don't know. First of all, she probably doesn't know because they don't really necessarily have that. They don't think as deeply as we do about these things at this point. It's not their fault. It's just not there yet. They also just may be exhausted and tired. So again, it's doing things that she loves that may not require any talking whatsoever. My daughter and I go on walks all the time. We don't have to talk. She does though. She's very talkative. We both are. Shocked. But so we'll just talk about any random thing. It doesn't have to be of anything, right? But just doing that and just having that connection, just sitting together, and spending that time and just being there without necessarily asking the questions. Because again, they may not be ready to say anything, but letting them know you're there when they are ready.
Jake, did you want to ask about tech?
Oh, I did have a question about tech. I'm sure you get asked a lot about this, and you did mention phones earlier as well. We've tried the take the phones away as a punishment option as well. I've got to hold my hands up and say,
oh, everyone has. Don't worry about it. You are one of everyone.
There are. Well, when I was speaking with a school, they were saying it's quite an interesting thing is that this is really the first generation where they've actually been raised with phones and all this, social media and things like this. I know that I guess the millennial generation, which is the one above them now, getting old.
I know, but you have like numerous generations.
Yeah, no, they're stacking up. Hello. Well, they had social media and things, but I think social media in itself was kind of in its infancy then, perhaps, whereas now it's developed and gone into loads of different things. And one of the things that they said at the school is that they're constantly monitoring and trying to keep up to date themselves with the next fad or the next social media platform that sort of shoots off. But one of the things that's apparent is that the majority of them, certainly in my daughter's schools, are using Snapchat, which is something that I'm not really that familiar with. But apparently, once you've read the message, it disappears. And my take on that was that kind of encourages secrecy, and also could be a place where bullying is rife and things like this.
Yeah.
So my wife said, I think we should ban them from using that. And I thought, well, I don't know how you'd go about doing that, because surely the way to address it would be to sort of encourage them to, I don't know, to use it sensibly or to become maturer. And I don't know where to begin to do that either.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on technology and Snapchat in particular, perhaps.
There is a lot of different ideas. I'll share you my personal one, which is open for use or not. But I actually, Jake, with what you said, I agree with in terms of wanting to teach them how to use it responsibly. And here's why. It's not going away. It's everywhere. Kids, if we ban it from them, they're going to find their friend's phone. They're going to find other ways. The other thing I've noticed is we create a scarcity mindset with it, which means if it's constantly being the source of, reward and punishment, well, now we've created this aura around it and this like need. I liken it to like toilet paper during the beginning of Corona, right? Nobody needed toilet paper more, but all of a sudden everyone was hoarding it, and then we couldn't get it, right? So kids start hoarding their technology because they don't know when it's going to get taken away from them. So we're creating an unhealthy relationship with technology rather than a healthy relationship with technology. And so for me, it's focusing on, first of all, and again, I don't necessarily focus on how much time either. I focus on what they're doing with it, because technology now, I'm on it more than my daughter is. So who am I to tell her she can't be on it when I'm on it? It's where we go to school. It's where we get research. It's where we socialize. It's where we entertain ourselves. It's everything. And yeah, we want them to go outside and we want them to do other things, but not instead of, but in addition to. Right? Yeah. Because we want to make sure, and there's a lot that they can get. Like there's a ton of cool stuff online. And I've seen a lot of people really, you were talking about your daughter and her friendships. I've actually seen people make really great friendships and communities online, but it's learning how to do that appropriately. So you know your kid better than anyone else, so you know the maturity level. So I don't say what age or what anything to allow them to do different mediums. When your child asks, I want to do Snapchat, it's really going, okay, help me understand why you want Snapchat. A lot of times it's because that's where all their friends are, right? And so, people are like, well, I grew up without Snapchat. You did, because it didn't exist then. So whoop-de-doo, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. So they might want Snapchat because that's where their friends are. And we already know how difficult it is to have friends. It's not necessarily, just because your friends, would you jump off a bridge? Like, I hate that too. No, that's how your friends are communicating with one another, and you want to continue that communication. Got it. Understood. Here's my concerns about Snapchat. And you explain, like, because things are hidden, I don't know who you're talking to. There's scary people out there. There's things that, here's the things I'm scared about. So let's talk about it. So it may be you putting Snapchat on your phone first and you doing it with them. So you understand, you going through the privacy settings with them and say, any social media you use ever, this is how we set it up. Only people you know. And here's the rules. And I'm going to friend you, and I'm going to follow you until I know you're comfortable with this, right? Or I was fortunate enough to have enough teens I mentored that followed my daughter. And so they would even tell me, because I wasn't on it that much, they would be like, Lexi posted this thing. It's a little questionable because she didn't know, so you may want to have a conversation. It wasn't a conversation of shame or I'm taking this away from you. It was a conversation of, we must not have had, this, we had this conversation or we didn't have this conversation, but here's the information. Like, do not share your full name. Never show where you are or what school you go to. And here's why. And explain to them why, so they learn to be safe on it and you're addressing those concerns. And if you do, here's the consequences. We're going to have to take this away if I don't feel that you're being safe on it, right? So it's really about teaching them, because our ultimate goal is for them to know how to make good choices on it.
Absolutely.
So, and the other concern is for a lot of people is the bullying and the negative self-esteem from it, right?
Yep.
So it's really looking at, if they're in instances of bullying, what does that look like? What does that mean? What do they do? A lot of kids see it and they don't even know what to do about it. Like, so what do you do? How can we do that and make sure you're a safe place for it, right? And looking at comparing yourself to other people and looking at, if your child's having really low self-esteem and body issues and they're looking at stuff, and I never recommend spying, going on and looking behind their back. That's going to decrease trust, and they're going to hide more from you. But going on with them and saying, hey, let me see what, and letting them know beforehand, I'm going to occasionally ask to see what's going on. And I want you to be able to share your texts with me and share these with me, because I need to make sure you're okay and safe. Still probably not going to like it, but it's still doing that and being able to realize, what are they doing on there? And if there's things like that you're really concerned about, you need to address it right away and start addressing that and having conversations about that. So that's my philosophy on it, is to embrace it and and help them learn how to use it intelligently.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, you've said some great things. I'm definitely going to listen to this again and sort of try and absorb as much of that as possible. And I think we're going to have a few chats off the back of this, and I'm sure that there's an awful lot of really, really useful information there. It's funny that you mentioned about sitting down and saying, hey, let's look at it together. I really like the idea of them teaching us how to use Snapchat and things like that. So
absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love that, Jake, because I think in general, asking your teens to teach you something is so empowering. It's such a great way to connect because they love feeling smart and needed and you showing interest. And so when they get to teach you, that just all around does amazing stuff for your connection and for their self-esteem.
Yeah, I think I've got the kernel of an idea there about how to address that particular thing. But she typically won't let you see her phone. There's about as much of the phone as you can ever see.
Yeah.
So, you know, that might be a good opener.
And it is, I mean, I have this with my daughter too. And here's insight as well, because I had this issue with my daughter as well. And it's very hard because when they're hiding stuff from you, our first thought is, they're hiding something they know we don't want to see. One thing I've learned that I find is interesting is a lot of times they're not trying to protect themselves, they're trying to protect their friends. And they're feeling like they don't feel like they have the right to share what their friends are saying to us. Like that is, that's betraying them. So that's one thing I've learned. Another thing is understanding that, you know, them knowing you're not going to judge what they're doing. And I think a lot of times they may not be sure how you're going to act. You may not understand what they're talking about because they're slang and talking about things differently than we are, and that, you know, might raise concerns. So I think it's really having, again, coming from a place of curiosity rather than judgment when we talk to them about stuff on their phones and why they're hiding their phones.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Thomas, you've got all this to come.
A lot of good stuff there, Dr. Cam.
Thank you. It's, you know, again, I feel that the teen years are our best opportunity to ensure our kids thrive. And that's why I really want parents to have the tools to make the most of those years, because they are actually can be really, really amazing years. And again, I have a 15-year-old. It's amazing. We both have our moments for sure. But in all, it's amazing.
If everyone was able to connect better, if we were all able to connect better with our teenage kids and sort of fortify them and allow them to grow and nurture them, become the best human being they can, and to recognize when something is toxic or when, you know, and if everyone was doing that, it just strikes me that the world, a lot of the problems that we have in the world would probably just shrink away and become things that people talk about in the history books and go, well, people really thought that way and did those things.
Mental health. My goal is to change. Mental health is declining. My goal is to change the trajectory of that. And I really believe the secret is what goes on in adolescence.
Yeah.
You mentioned the teen stage, and this is, I might be getting my my psychology from like Hollywood feature films here, but have you got any thoughts on the stages of being a teen? And so like my analogy for this is like if someone is pregnant, then they go through the stages of pregnancy, and we know what the implications of that are in relation to development, but in relation to teenage years, I don't feel like it's common knowledge where, okay, these age groups, like let's say, I don't know, 12 to 14 or something, this happens, and then 15 to 16. Do you see what I'm getting at there?
I know exactly what you're getting at, and I actually haven't never broken it down into that. We probably can. The reason I kind of avoid that a little bit is because it's so different for every single teenager, and they kind of go through times at different times. And parents, when we have an expectation of what's supposed to happen and your kids don't do that, we get freaked out. And so I will tell you personally, like during the stages of when my daughter was little, and I adopted my daughter from Guatemala. So she was 9 months when I brought her home. Wow. And she wasn't rolling over at all. She was like none of the tasks that she was supposed to be doing, she was doing. And everything that she did was far, far, far later than the books had said. And I mean, I was a psychologist that had studied developmental psychology, and I was still freaked out. So, you know, it's, so I know what you're saying. And I think it's really important to kind of know expectations in terms of brain development, what could happen. I also am very wary about setting up expectations so that parents are measuring their kids against anything, because we already are constantly worried our kids aren't measuring up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess, is there anything to look out for? Kind of like, not necessarily by age, but by, for example, they might be, as you said, trying to be autonomous at a particular time. Like, is there anything to note there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things I hear about a lot when kids turn, you know, like 11, 12, 13 years old is, I really miss the sweet little kid they once were. They used to be so sweet. I just want them back. I just want little Tommy back. I just want little Sarah back. And here's what I say about that. Your child is going to become a teenager. That's not a negative thing, but it is a different thing. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with them, but I think and it's okay to mourn the littleness, cuteness, innocent, thinking you were all great. It's okay to mourn that, but saying, I want that back, or I wish they would get back there, is telling them, I don't like who you are now. And so I think it's learning to adapt and appreciate and watch them and follow their guidance as they change and what they need. So I think, Thomas, what you're asking, and the biggest thing is, when they hit those years, whatever it is, some are younger, some are older, but those years where they start pulling away a little bit, is going, okay, now's the time I need to adapt my parenting style rather than trying to change them back to who they were. I need to change because I need to adapt and follow what they need from me. And I think a lot of parents with teenagers, one of the things they struggle with the most is this feeling of failure or feeling of frustration, because they're trying to continue to parent the way they always have, and it doesn't work anymore. It's a whole new parenting style. It's a whole new thing. We're no longer raising them and protecting them. We're now trying to set them up to be adults, right? We're trying to set them up to be, our goal is to have them think on their own, to make their own decisions, to be different from us and follow their own unique passions. It's a whole different ballgame. And so I think being open and aware to that and realizing, okay, I'm seeing the signs of my teen wanting to be separate from me. The attitude's coming out. That attitude doesn't mean they disrespect me. That attitude means they're trying to establish that autonomy and that distance. So I need to change how I react to them and respond to them. Does that help?
If you interpret, quote unquote, the bad attitude as trying to gain autonomy, I think that could be a really big help for a lot of parents. So thank you for clarifying that.
I want to share my one little observation I made yesterday. This is a brand new little example. So I want to get your opinion and see if this works. So the eye rolls and the shrugs and the I don't knows, that trigger us, I equate those to unfollows on Facebook. And here's why. When you have a friend that has very strong political beliefs that are different from yours, and they're constantly blaring those opinions at you as if they want to change how you view it, they're trying to change it and prove to you that they're right, but they don't listen to anybody else or what you're saying, what do you ultimately do? You get tired of hearing it, you unfollow eventually. That to me is what teens are doing when they're rolling their eyes and they're shrugging, is that they feel like you're coming at them with all the stuff you expect of them and what you want from them without taking time to hear what their side is and what they need. What do you think?
The unfollow is the healthy way to go. I think a lot of people get in that comment
That's
section,
true.
right?
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
And exactly right. That's exactly right. A lot of times we argue, which is the conflict, right?
Yeah. And you live somewhere near DC, so I guess that's
I do.
quite a common occurrence.
Common occurrence. I have a lot of relatives with very different political beliefs than I do too, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
Would you mind, before we
like that.
finish, I want to be respectful of your time,
Oh,
but
yes.
I think it's worth just trying to get this, which is the 4 habits of a calm parent. Do you mind sharing that?
Absolutely. So the first one, and this is really how to show up for your kids. And so the first one is curiosity, right? And that is making sure, and we've talked about that a lot, it's making sure that you are understanding why your teen is behaving the way they do. And you're always looking to the why. The next one is the A is accountability, taking accountability of how you're showing up to the relationship. What are you bringing to the relationship? The third one is thinking long term. So we tend to focus so much on what's going on right now, and we don't think of why. What is our goal as a parent? What are we trying to teach them? What do we want to instill in them? So we want to think long term as a parent, right? We do this with everything else. Let's think long term. And the fourth one is just being really mindful about your interactions with your teen and how it's really thinking about, I'm staying present. I'm very focused on an outcome and providing and empowering them with the tools that they need. So it's just the way we show up as a parent.
Wow. Yeah.
Jake, did
And
you
you've
have
got-
anything you wanted to add?
Well, I was just saying, in that I think in the background there you've got, is that power phrases for parents?
It
Is that
is.
your-
So this
yeah.
is a book I wrote a while ago, and it's actually scripts. So there's a lot of parenting books that tell you like concepts. And I know even as a parent, I was like, yeah, but what does that look like? What does that mean? So I broke down pretty much any topic I could possibly think of, gave some tips, and provided a lot of scripts to help you start conversations with your teens on pretty much any topic. So it's just kind of like a starting point, and it shows you, okay, this is how I can phrase it in a way that's going to be less confrontational and hopefully encourage more conversation.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I've not come across that concept before, but it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I saw it for a lot of other things for leadership. So I'm like, we need this for parents.
Yeah.
I created it.
Yeah, well, it's great. And it's available, presumably.
Amazon, everything's on Amazon. I get everything from Amazon. I sell everything through Amazon.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos, he's doing all right
Jeff Bezos. I'm sending Jeff Bezos off to space personally, I think. Yeah.
You and me both. Yeah, great.
Where is the best place to find you, Dr. Cam?
Best place is my website, which is askdrcam.com. And you can find information on how to contact me. I do a free 20-minute consult with people, so we can just talk about what's going on with you and your child. And I have my podcast, Parenting Teens with Dr. Cam, that I do twice a week.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much for all the value today. You've been great,
Absolutely.
so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I'm gonna watch this over and over, I think, and just absorb as much of this really valuable information as I can. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.